It's been over 6 years since it was first announced that a live-action Alien series was coming to Hulu, and the first 2 episodes have finally dropped. So let's talk about it. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know, what did you think about the first 2 episodes of Alien Earth? This will be both a spoiler-free and a spoiler review of the episodes. There'll be very clear chapter markers, so if you haven't watched it yet, you will be warned before you go into spoiler territory. But with that in mind, if you've seen the episodes and want to talk spoilers down below in the comments, feel free to do so. Just please put up a spoiler warning for those who are checking it out, checking out the video before watching the episodes. As a little bit of point of reference for me, Alien and Aliens are 2 of my favorite movies of all time, where the xenomorph is the best alien creature design in cinematic history, and the world was designed with just really good world building, so there's a depth of lore that there's more places that you want to explore coming out of those 2 films. Now, over my lifetime, there have also been a number of Alien films which have broken my heart or disappointed me greatly. But the idea of an Alien TV show, with the amount of time that comes with a TV show, can give the opportunity to really build out the lore and explore all these nooks and crannies of the universe, and have plenty of time to just kind of do different stuff with the xenomorphs without having to, just come up with wacky ideas, which they've done many times in the franchise, but just time to let things play out without the urgency required of a movie. There's a lot of potential there, but also it's never been done before, so maybe there's a reason it's never been done before. And finally, we're getting it with a big budget, and they spent a lot of time writing it, shooting it, and handling it in post-production. Does it live up to the best of the franchise, or is it another disappointment? Well, here are my thoughts. Here are my spoiler-free thoughts on the first 2 episodes of the show. And my initial reaction, just having finished the 2nd episode about an hour ago, is largely very positive, very optimistic. I've got a few concerns about how they will be able to maintain this for a full season. There were a few things that I went, I don't know about that. That's straining a little bit too much credibility. But overall, this felt like a nice, fresh addition to the franchise. And it is about 40% just classic Alien. Like, the opening sequence of this is very much Alien. And you kind of cut back to it all throughout the whole first episode, and then you get into the 2nd episode, and maybe it's a little bit more Aliens with a more action-based version of things, but classic feeling Alien situations, Aliens type action, the aesthetic, the analog futuristic devices. Just, you feel like you're in a familiar environment, kind of the same way that Alien Romulus felt like we're returning to that classic, original Alien world. So that's about 40% of it. And then there's this other 40% of it, which is very Philip K. Dick, very Blade Runner, Do Androids Dream of Sheep, this kind of exploration of what is a human, and taking kind of that, the corporate world, the technology, that side of things, and playing it out with this very Philip K. Dick flavor to it of playing around with the concept of what is life, what is immortality, what does this being of life. And it's interesting because obviously Blade Runner, Philip K. Dick are not at all tied to the Alien franchise, except by the bridge that is Ridley Scott. And it makes for a bridge that works really, really well. Like, you feel certain similarities of flavor, not the noir investigation side to it, but those philosophical ideas in a sci-fi context. And it makes sense in the world of Alien, where you have synthetics and this technology's kind of already been there, and they lean into that heavily. And so there's a 40% that is very classic Alien. And then there's 40% that is very much not something we've seen in the world of Alien before, but doesn't feel wrong. It doesn't feel like out of place. I think it will be polarizing on a canon level because, and we'll talk about that later on, there's a lot in here that canon purists, for good reason, will be like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? But just in terms of like what fits in the franchise, like on an idea level and things we've played around with before, and when you're dealing with television, which the benefit of television is that you can have more subplots, you can dive into the characters, you can dive into the world a lot more because there's just so much more runtime. It makes sense that you dive into the corporate world and the technologies evolving. And so it actually worked really well. Like at first I was like, what are we doing here? And I was like, oh, I see. Well, this is kind of interesting. And then the remaining 20% is kind of its own flavor, its own little ingredients, its own creative and artistic flourishes that some of them work, some of them don't. But it's kind of fresh and new and adds something to this world. But just being able to go to the Earth and spend a lot of time on the Earth of the world of Alien, that you hear so much about Weyland-Yutani, and it's so much about like corporations treating people as just cogs in a machine. And then we go to that Earth and we spend time there and see it play out in the corporate politics of all of it, like really leaning into that in a franchise that has always been baked into the cake. That's always been part of the DNA of this franchise, is the evil of corporations. And now like seeing that and even the different worldviews of the different corporations, it's compatible, it fits. And we're getting our alien action that we want and classic alien type situations and familiarity. The second episode in particular starts to give you a flavor of how the pacing of an alien TV show is different from the pacing of an alien movie. With the basic premise here, this isn't spoilers or anything, the basic premise is a spacecraft with a bunch of specimens crashes into a city, and we're dealing with the aftermath of that. And so people are walking around this spaceship, very familiar alien type situations, but at the pacing of a TV show. It feels like an episode of a TV show of people like show up at this new place trying to figure out what's going on there, thinking that they're just helping people and discovering, oh crap, there's something in here. And when you make a movie, it's 2 hours long in total. And so you kind of move at this brisk pace from plot beat to plot beat. And when you watch a TV episode, you get to marinate in it a little bit more. When you sit in it a little bit more with the characters, the situations, and let it unfold. And it was kind of interesting to just like have that happen and feel the difference. And just thinking through, like, if this was an alien movie, ship crashes, you're like, here's the setup, here's a little bit of walking around, and here's our big finale. But here, the fun of it is seeing all the different reactions to these creatures, that you can have different types of creatures because we have time to explore them. You have dumb people in the building. And so it's just a little different with the way that it plays out on the pacing and the amount of time you get to play around. And it even kind of just reminded me of some of the Alien video games, so Isolation or the more action-based ones, of you just kind of explore a little bit and look around. And I like that. On the character level, it feels a little bit early to chime in too much on them. But we got Timothy Olyphant character, who's not the lead. He's definitely a side character. And it for that reason, he kind of feels underutilized. But him being Timothy Olyphant so good that he steals kind of every scene that he's in, and brings a nice energy to him. The lead character in here is played by someone with the last name Chandler, so naturally, I think that she's fantastic in the show. But without wanting to go too much into specifics of the nature of her character, I like the way that they played her out. There's a lot of things they could have done, adding in some angst or trauma on more overtly. that I was like, oh, is this where we're heading with this? And they didn't really. They played it out in a very different way. And I appreciated that. Like, there's an innocence in the character and a naivety and a simplistic right and wrong value set and heroism that I appreciated at least 2 episodes into it. I like see where we're going with it and how it all plays out. But thus far, I've really liked what they've done with her. And our main face of evil corporations and irresponsible corporate behavior. The guy that we've given this super young trillionaire that's brilliant. The first episode I wasn't quite sure about. In the second episode, they give him a little bit more of like, what's like making him tick? Like, what is his justifications of what he's doing? And they give you just enough. You go, okay, that's interesting. It's a different version of narcissism, of just like living entirely based off your. Okay, I like what they're kind of doing here. So I like the characters thus far. On the negative side to it, the immediate thing that kind of came to mind, even just in the first episode, with the situation that they set up and where things are going, just kind of thought, how can you sustain this for a season? Like, are we, is this just this kind of crash? Is this just the first arc of a season that kind of goes to other places? And then, in which case, I just don't know what the season is. Or how do you maintain the, trying to contain the crash for the whole span of a season? Like it seems like a setup that either it goes in wildly different directions or it runs out of gas. Because it feels like the setup that works for a movie, not the setup for a TV show. So that's more of kind of like a concern. It's not, you don't feel that in the first 2 episodes, but it is a little bit of like, okay, will this be able to maintain the momentum? Like even the urgency, the fear of an alien movie is that you have people show up, they don't know what they're in for, they realize, oh crap, we're in this mess, and then you have this intensity. Even like the movie Aliens, I don't know, it could sustain too much longer of a runtime because it just gets your heart racing, you're so tense, and you need that release. That's what makes it so brilliant. But it's something you can only do for like a movie. So how do you maintain that intensity, that urgency of an alien story with the weekly episodic nature of television and weekly release schedule of this series and maintain it across several episodes? That is a concern I have. Might be unfounded. There's also several things in here that you just have to like accept. Some choices that are made. That our lead character and her team of people are sent in on this rescue mission requires a lot of suspension of disbelief. I think they needed to do a few more things in the setup episode. Maybe establish a little bit more time had passed, a little bit more training had taken place in this direction to justify them being sent in, because the immediate thought, like everyone has the same thought, like, hey, wait a minute, why would you do this with how untrained they are and how valuable they are? What, you would never do this, not without like dramatic, way more like this is such a volatile, extreme situation. You wouldn't do this in this manner with all of them. It doesn't make any sense. And it's like the start of the show. It's like the foundation of everything. You go, that's the thing that you had to like, you should massage the most to make sure that the audience buys into it. And it feels like it's so rushed. Now, granted, the decision maker in this, his last name is Cavalier, spelled with a K, but it's Cavalier. So the idea that he's rather cavalier and reckless, it is literally in his name. And he's written to be that. He's not this carefully well-designed person making conservative, safe choices. He is reckless. That's built into him. So it's not out of character that he would do this, but it does feel like a bit too big of a stretch in the context of it. And there's a number of choices in here that I could see that are just, I don't know, with too on the nose, too silly. There's some shots that came out. Someone took a screenshot of the second episode and they posted it on Twitter like, this is a real picture from Alien Earth. And if you just see the picture without context, you would like I would have assumed it was photoshopped because it's such a ridiculous, silly image juxtaposition of two franchises. It doesn't make any sense. Like you'd be like, obviously that's not real. They're making a joke, but it's real. In context, it makes total sense, and it's made like I didn't love the thing that they used as the connection point between a couple characters that is a pop culture reference. I didn't love it because it pulled me. It didn't feel right in the world of Alien to do that. Something that was so familiar to us. But I didn't hate it either. But like I could see some of that pulling people out of it a little bit because it's just so like our world and their world. In a way that we haven't seen that. Like Reebok logos is not the same thing as what they do in these episodes with something. And some people I can imagine, and I've even seen, aren't crazy about the merger of where the Philip K. Dick stuff. I've always been very critical of when the franchise leans into like hybrids with the xenomorphs and stuff like that, and really kind of builds out the lore and things like that. And this kind of does this in a different. I mean, it does it with there's multiple aliens in this species in this. That's built in the premise. That's not a spoiler or anything like that. That's the opening scene. That there's multiple things that are dangerous. But this does it somewhat with the tech side, the corporate side of things. And I've seen some people like, why do we have to keep making everything all this other stuff rather than just leaning into the simple basic premise? Some people feel that way. I think I bought into it pretty quickly. It could lose me, but thus far into it, I was okay with it. Some people probably won't be okay with it. But overall, very positive on the first two episodes. Fantastic production design. Just everything looks amazing. Looks incredibly expensive. And it's amazing what television shows can do these days. The production value is tremendous. Few things that I went, can you sustain this? And that didn't fully convince me, but I'm okay with it. Largely positive. From there, if you haven't seen it yet, here's your spoiler warning. Let's talk a couple of those specific spoilers. All right, we are in spoiler zone, so if you haven't seen it yet, here's your warning. 3, 2, 1. I don't think this was any of the marketing, so this is the stuff I didn't know going into it, but the opening frame of this talks about there's a competition in the tech world over 3 different types of things. Synthetics, which we, of course, know in this universe. Cyborgs, which I don't think have been established at all. And hybrids, a synthetic with a human's consciousness in it. This is the opening frame, and immediately you go, oh, this show's very much leaning into the corporate politics and playing willy-nilly with the lore or with the canon. So I'm curious how much by the end of this I'll be like, okay, I enjoyed it, so I'm just putting it in its own little canon box, but man, they messed with it. Or will I be like, oh, that's so frustrating because it broke the canon, but there was a lot of cool stuff. I don't know how I'll feel at the end of it, but right out of the gate, it just doesn't even, it feels like just like, yeah, here's the stuff I'm interested in and I'm going for it. We're going to copy the aesthetic of the original one, so it feels very familiar, but also we're going to tell you right out of the gate, here's all this new stuff that you've never seen before in here, and it existed 2 years before the first movie took place. But so we see a cyborg very early on, is just like the synthetics, working hard for the corporations. And then our lead character is a hybrid. Like right out of the gate, this little girl, you're like, oh crap, she's looks like she's got cancer, and I see, this girl's she's gonna be our hybrid. She's this human put into a synthetic. Okay, that's where this show is going. And immediately they do it to a bunch of other people. And it's like, really? You wouldn't wait to see how they respond first? Like, it felt like because they needed to get to the plot of the show, which is the crash, it had to speed run through like a bunch of really important setup. Like, I feel like this, like, I don't know how you could have done, like, I fully understand our show is an alien story, so it has to be about the all this other stuff. Like, has to be about alien carnage. We got to get there as quick as possible. But there's a lot of work to get to that if your lead character is going to be this new thing that we're exploring what it means to be a human. And so I felt like we had to speed run from one little girl, she's the first, to by the end of the first episode, we have a team of them that we can send into the field. That needed more time. I'm thinking like, that's a bit rushed. I saw some other people. I think that like really out of the gate, they're like, this makes absolutely no sense. I can't buy into this. And I think that's fair. That's a pretty big ask of the audience that they're literally sending in children in prototype bodies without training into a crashed ship in a building that's collapsing. We know there's aliens in there, but just the basic version of this, that is such an extraordinarily dangerous thing to do. But almost immediately they do this. Like, we're going to put the girl in there, and they cut to her like dangling on a cliff, and I was like, well, that's really reckless that they're like allowing her to do that. Couldn't she break? And they show her jump down and go, oh, that my concern was that she could break. They see her up there. They're not worried because she can sustain that. Like, establishing right of the way, she's not afraid. She's not having some existential crisis about who she is and whining. She's enjoying having a body that works. And I appreciated that they didn't. They have some of the other characters dealing, like, processing the transition more difficultly or being more immature. And she's naive. She's childish in many ways. But they don't give her, like, those kind of overt, like, I don't want the show bogged down in, am I a human? What am I? Just this angst. Like, that's not what I'm looking for from the show. But, like, some interesting... sci-fi is a great mechanism to explore fascinating ideas, and that's why so many Philip K. Dick's short stories translated into so many classic movies, because he had these like, do androids dream? Or like, if you could if you could implant a memory into someone's brain, how would they know if it was real or not? That's an interesting and you use that as a sci-fi mechanism to tell a thrilling, exciting story. And that's kind of what this is doing. It's in that same tradition. And if you take a human's consciousness and memories and put it into a synthetic body, it's not human the same way I'm a human. It's not human the same way she was before. But what is it? And even the way they process this very quickly on is like talking about, well, you don't have all of these hormones that create certain emotional reactions. And that's good sci-fi. It's interesting sci-fi of like, oh, that's right. The puberty process, the mind, it is so driven by hormones that are not in a synthetic. So what is it? How does it mature and grow up? Which also immediately makes you go, why would you make a team of these before you see how one responds? But like that's the sci-fi stuff that I went, oh, that's real sci-fi, not space adventure, not a Western in space, not a haunted house movie in space, true sci-fi. Interesting scientific ideas being explored through technology that doesn't exist yet. That's what they did, which I really appreciated. But, once again, sending children in super expensive, extremely secretive, tech bodies into the public in a dangerous environment, you're like, what? That's not a good idea. And immediately the problem with this plan plays out, where I was wondering how long they would delay the reveal to the brother that it's the sister. And she clearly doesn't, like, she's not great at being secretive about it because she's also a child, but she's not saying it. And the stupid, immature kid with her behaves like a kid and immediately reveals the secret. Both secrets. Their existence and her identity. Which is something a kid would do. This is also why you don't send kids that are super secret tech in a world of corporate espionage. We're competing for the future of the world. Which corporation will rule the world? And the secret is entrusted to children released to a dangerous environment. It's the sort of thing that just doesn't make any sense. Even if you say he's irresponsible, to some extent, he knows it's super secretive, so we're on an island, they can't leave, like, all this, they can't leave. You can't leave. You'll never go home. Also, let's send you into the public with very little supervision. And in the context of where this took place, no supervision. So there's some of those things in there where you go, even that, like, they have them, they're clearly being watched by tech guy and everything like that. And they have earpieces, they can hear them. His kid starts spilling the beans. Clearly you shouldn't do it. And no one says in his ear, don't do that. Stop. Shut up, kid. These are important, very expensive secrets. Be quiet. They didn't do that. So there's some of those things that bugged me a little bit about it. But also, like, it, I don't know, expanding the world. Like the things I enjoyed about it, I don't need to explain to you why I like alien action and the idea of playing it out in a TV show, like where we're going through floors of a building and there's all kinds of people in there. There's rooms that people are having parties and they're like drunk and ignoring the chaos around them. Military people, medics, like all these different factions, like all the subplots and levels that you can have on a TV show. That's cool. And all these different creatures. And so we're like, how are they dangerous and what do they do? And what else was Weyland-Yutani trying to do? I like all of that. So, but anyway, the big one to talk about was I really was surprised how quickly they revealed the brother-sister deal. Because and I don't know where they're going. I don't know how they sustain all of this, but that's the sort of thing where you go, that feels like something that you hold on to for an episode or two, play out the dynamic of like, why are you guiding me around? Why do you trust me? Why do you like him responding like that? And then you have the reveal and you build up the tension. So you have big payoff versus here. It was like they meet. She doesn't say anything immediately. So it feels like we're building that tension only for it to be revealed almost immediately by a stupid kid that shouldn't be on public with a secret. So that was interesting. I don't know where they're going with this. And that's once they were like, will they run out of steam? Because that was like, that's your big thing. That's on an emotional level, character reveal level. That's the thing. And it happens so late into the second episode that you don't really get enough of a flavor for the dynamic of the show. You get the cliffhanger, he's taken, so of course she's going to go rescue him. But there's just like a number of those things, just kind of like figure out where it's going. I was curious about him. Anyway, I don't know how many week-to-week reviews I'll do. Kind of depends on how much people interact here. Depends on what happens, how much I have to say. TV shows, I don't tend to like to do week-to-week reviews on a lot of shows because they're, it's the nature of episodic television. I don't have I don't have a video's worth of thoughts, full-length video worth of thoughts on episodes that kind of deliver the same type of entertainment value. So it kind of depends on how many new reveals, twists, turns, explorations of the human condition and synthetic bodies happen. But we'll see what happens, how much I cover it. All that stuff depends on what I have to say and how successful the videos are. Let me know your thoughts on it down below. Be sure to put those spoiler warnings up. Here's my videos on the alien movies right around here. And keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.